Royce, chairman of the powerful House Foreign Affairs Committee. Mr. Chairman, good to have you with us. First, your reaction, if you will, to the president's statement.
Well, Lou, one of the ironies here is that we've gone from this being the JV team, junior varsity team, as the president called it, to it now being a threat. But one of the reasons it has gone to the point of becoming a threat is because the Kurdish forces, for example, that approached the United States, that asked for weapons, weren't supplied. The Kurdish minister told me that they couldn't get from the U.S. the anti-tank missiles or the artillery or long-range that they needed in order to help their troops defeat ISIL on the battlefield. So it seems to me that this has been bungled to some extent, month after month, by not giving the support to the Kurds. And at the same time, if we were going to do airstrikes, we could have done those strikes months ago when our embassy requested it of the president, when the ISIS terrorists with their black flags flying were racing across the desert to take town after town. Why not catch them out in the open and knock out their columns then? So I think there's been some lost opportunities here, and I think the question is going to be execution, because the American public do not want to pay for this. So let's have the Arab League, the Gulf states, come forward and pay for a good portion of this. So execution is going to determine whether we get them on board to pay for the lion's share of it. And then the other aspect of it is we're not going to do airstrikes alone, I would hope, because we've had offers from the Australians, from the French. The United Kingdom, I think, is interested in this. Let's get them to carry part of the burden. The United States should not carry this burden alone. And so I see this as, you know, there's only 17,000 ISIS fighters. I think you could certainly, you know, with some air power and with the Kurdish forces on the ground moving against them, you could take a lot of them out. But it's going to take a strategy to do it, and so far we haven't seen an effective strategy out of the administration.
The president made it clear that U.S. air power will be brought to bear against the Islamic State, but also in support of ground troops, whether they be the troops of Iraq or coalition forces. It is unclear what that coalition will be and in what manner the participation of each nation will be evidenced. But the fact of the matter is, the president has no boots on the ground. Can the United States succeed? Can this coalition succeed without our boots on the ground?
You know, I think back to the opening days of the first Gulf War, George Bush Sr., the coalition he put together, but especially the air campaign. There were, you know, some 40 brigades out there, 3,700 tanks, tens of thousands of pieces of equipment, all taken out by air power. The difference was this has been, you know, 120 flights or so. He had over 100,000 flights targeting these assets until they were eliminated, and it became fait accompli in pretty short order. So part of this is if you're going to go forward and do it, and that coalition included many other air forces besides just ours participating. You do it with your coalition partners. Back then, if you'll recall, he got the Saudis to pay for the operation.
$56 billion.
They came up with the cash on the barrelhead because they felt threatened. Kuwait had been invaded. They felt threatened at the time, so they were willing, and our other partners, Kuwait, were willing to pay for it. So I think in that case you saw leadership, you saw direct involvement between our president and these other heads of state. America had credibility. So when we asked, these partners came on board. I think it's now up to the president to go out there and do the hard work of asking the Saudis to help pay for this, asking the Kuwaitis and others to write the checks, and asking NATO to come in and help cover this operation. And lastly, let's get the equipment to the Kurds that they need to be victorious on that battlefield. I don't understand why they withheld the anti-tank weapons and the other types of weapons needed against ISIL. So again, this has to be executed in a logical way with a lot of focus.
Do you support, Mr. Chairman, arming the remaining rebels to the regime of Bashar al-Assad. What are your views?
I know that there is a faction in Aleppo that ISIL is attacking, and at the same time, Assad's attacking that faction. That is generally called the Free Syrian Army. Those particular units, obviously, are resisting both ISIL on one front and then to the south, Assad's regime. So if we put into their hands the wherewithal to deal with ISIL and defeat ISIL, there's a certain logic to that. So I can see going forward with this, but the president has not, over the last 2.5 years, done anything to be supported. And so it's something of a surprise tonight to go from 2 weeks ago, we have no strategy, to, the announcement of a strategy tonight.
Right.
We're going to hear some of this next week.
Right. When
my committee holds hearings. We're going to have the Secretary of State there. Let's hear some of the details laid out there. But I think it does make sense to support those who are fighting ISIL.
Congressman, we appreciate you being with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Congressman Ed Royce, Chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee.